All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Monday, July 14th, right here on your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson, and this is All In Horns. And we've already got the giggles for you to start this week off. And it's been, hey, as far as Mondays go, been a good Monday. Got to say, it's good. It's been a good Monday. So today's episode, we're going to be basically diving into the Felix Ojo commitment and the recruitment process, him choosing Tech over Texas. But hey, you know what? Here's the thing, Jake. You're going to have to compete with the big dogs when it comes to NIL and opportunities. And this is honestly not a bad play for Texas Tech, in my opinion. Like, do I agree with the amount of money? I think it's crazy to send that much of a percentage of your revenue sharing and of your of the NIL deals that you do get to a single player like that. But hey, whatever they have to do, there's going to be years. You and I have already mentioned it. You're going to get years like an Ole Miss or some of these other programs that are going to have to go all in on a couple of years to feel like they're competing or to win their conference. And I think that year right now is for Texas Tech. And, Coach McGuire, he might be out by this year if they don't get the results that the donors and that the funds are coming from. If they don't get those types of results, he might be gone. But anyway, so Felix Ojo, for those who don't know, give a little bit of backstory here. He's a 5-star offensive tackle, left tackle, one of the more highly sought after recruits in the entire country. Texas obviously was heavily recruiting him. He led Texas on a little bit, stringing him along. Texas Tech comes up with a $5.1 million NIL deal. It actually stretches over 3 years, which, Jake, I think is actually a really smart idea. Each year, his NIL, amount goes up per year up to his third year, which is, I think, 2.1 million last time I checked. And so, it's, again, I can't say if I'm Felix Ojo, I wouldn't do the same thing. I can't necessarily put myself in that situation and say, oh, if someone's offering me $5.1 million, then I'm not going to take it. On the other side of it, the amount of money you could make if you are a national champion or playing at the highest level for the highest caliber program, and then getting recognized at the NFL draft or whatever. Again, if he's good enough, he's going to get drafted. None of that really matters at the end of the day. But your thoughts on it, Jake? I thought this was kind of an insane deal, and it's like this is kind of where we've gotten. I thought Texas Tech, again, kind of set it up nicely with the 3-year kind of growth in each year. And I can't blame smaller schools like Texas Tech for handing something out like this if they want to get these big name, highly sought after recruits. It's kind of what they are going to have to do.
Yeah, and there, to me, there's kind of multiple things with this. Is Texas Tech a small school in the NIL era? Is one thing that I think is a valid question, because you have Cody Campbell, who is their kind of big billionaire donor, that has said he's not going anywhere. He was on X talking smack to fans of other fan bases of being like, yeah, no, I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. This is what I want to spend a lot of money on.
It's like Mr. Nike for Oregon, whatever I can't remember his name, but yeah.
Phil Nike. But yeah, I mean, because he's the one who kind of moved on the Kennedy deal. And then for Tech, I think their softball team making a national championship was kind of an eye opener of like, we can pay our way pump money into this and we can find our way. And they got more 5-star recruits that are starting to get forecasted to them. So that's kind of the first thing to me is Tech might be a legit issue for Texas, for an A&M, for an Oklahoma, for these kind of teams that have kind of dominated the state of Texas and kind of, that general South region in recruiting. Tech is going to be a player, in my opinion, in the coming years. The second part of this is just how crazy this was, because supposedly the parents or at least people close to Ojo had basically told Texas it was them. Mm-hmm. Texas Tech was not in his top 8 when he announced his top 8. They didn't have their hat on the table. He did one visit there. That was some time ago. He had visited Texas, I think, about 8 times, and then ends up going to Texas Tech.
Yeah.
So kind of probably one of the more crazy NIL recruitments we've seen. And then kind of the third thing to me is what you said, which is I do think Tech has the right idea of doing these multi-year deals. And I think Texas would have been willing to match a deal like this. But if you're Texas, you do those deals for Justice Terry. You do those deals for Kelvin Banks on the year where you have to get a lineman like that.
Yep.
You don't do it on a year where ultimately he's probably going to come in and be a project for a year or two before he ever touches the field. And then if you commit that much money to a player who's probably not going to touch the field for your roster for a couple of years, that makes it that much harder to retain other talent, to hit the transfer portal, and to continue to recruit other big names.
Yeah, unless he's gonna compete with Brandon Baker on the right side.
Yeah, or Nick Brooks, who's going to be kind of a next in line tackle.
Yeah,
and so you or in Ojo, or not Ojo. Lost it, but there one other tackle. I think is it Ojo, and it's like the same last name. It's something like that. I'm blanking, but yeah, I mean, for Tech, it makes all the sense in the world. Go out, start getting your name buzzing, getting some 5 stars. The Big 12 doesn't really have another team that I think, other than maybe a BYU. Right. Ironically,
you win the Big 12, and guess where you're playing.
And that, to me, is another discussion from in this. I'm looking at the top 10 players right now and where they're committed to from the 2026 class. The number 1 overall recruit is to Miami. Then you have Georgia. Then you have Maryland. You have Texas Tech in there now. And I know I think it's you have BYU in the top 20. You have Houston in the top 20. And you're starting to get some schools that you wouldn't typically see. Syracuse has a top, 35 recruit in the country. You're starting to see some names that I don't feel like you typically would see on these recruiting lists. And so I think NIL to me is going to probably spread the talent out more, where the top teams are. I think what's going to hurt parity, if anything, is the transfer portal. But I think when it comes to just recruiting out of high school, we're seeing more and more of this top talent spread, because I saw a graphic the other day of how many 5-star teams, or how many teams have a 5-star recruit for 2026. And the list of teams was significantly larger than we've seen in other years.
Well, and I think that actually is, like you said, is going to bring parity to the league or to the country. And Jake, there might be some years, again, it's college athletics. It's never going to be this consistent thing. It's going to have its ebbs and flows of ups and downs of, you might have a TCU competing to play for a national championship one year, because you're going to get just an upperclassman team that's been playing together for 3 to 4 years, and they're really well coached and they're put together, and they get 1 or 2 big transfers that sees that potential, and they're kind of making a game-changing move by elevating that team for one season. And then probably you're going to lose a lot either to a draft, or you're going to lose a lot to a transfer portal. And their recruiting is going to suffer mightily from losing those players. And then it's going to be another 3 to 4 year building up process until they can kind of retain that NIL and kind of regain those funds to push back into the recruiting or transfer portal, whichever way they want to build their program through. But I've also said it like this, Jake, and I've said it multiple times. Just because some of the smaller teams are losing some of their best players to, the Alabamas, the Texases, the Floridas of the world that are kind of scounging them from the transfer portal, you're also getting the guys that are leaving Alabama that were highly recruited at LSU and Oregon and Ohio State that are leaving because they're not getting the playing time that they want, and they're going to smaller schools. So I still think it's maybe not as much of that, but I still feel like there's a balancing out part of highly recruited players that aren't getting the playing time going to smaller schools, and then lower recruited players that are elevating their play up and they're going up to the higher schools. I still think that there's a balance there.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, we're still so early in this era that it's hard to say how it's going to play out. Cause
yeah,
I
don't think there's ever going to be a flat line of like, this is how it is now. I think there's going to be years where people are like, oh, the NIL is ruining parity. And of course you got Georgia, Bama, and Texas because they just pay their players. Then you're going to have other years where you might have, 2 or 3 teams that make a deeper run, that make the Final Four, where you're like, wait a second, maybe NIL is creating more parity in the league.
And, we did just have Arizona State be very close to reaching a semifinal. And then the team that beat them was, just a set of downs away from possibly beating Ohio State, who went to win it all. Yeah. And so, there were a lot of blowouts in this last playoff. Yes. With the home games in round 1. I don't think that's going to be the case every season, especially since they have fixed kind of that big issue with the format, in my opinion, for this upcoming season. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Big 12 team like a BYU, like a Texas Tech, make a run at some point, just because you're seeing them start to invest more heavily. And they're just going, we have donors who have the money, why not do it? Then you have this revenue sharing side of things, and that every school has that. And so I think you're going to see some schools put more money into basketball or more money into baseball. We just saw
I was going to say, look at what BYU did in basketball. That got the #1 recruit in the entire country.
And we just saw Coastal Carolina make a run to the national championship in baseball because they know they're a bit of a baseball school.
Yep.
And so I think you're going to see some schools just invest a bunch into one program versus spreading it out between the programs to try to compete for national titles to get their school on the map.
Well, and then you're going to have a Texas program that's probably going to spread it out fairly evenly, I would think, because they
can because of the NIL factor. That's where the top schools are still going to benefit.
Yeah.
But I still think you're going to see some mid-major schools that are going to invest heavily into one program or two programs and probably be pretty competitive in those. What does that mean? We'll see a non-Big Ten or SEC team win a title in football anytime soon? I don't think so, but at the same time,
we could have a Clemson win it next year.
Yeah, that's a team who's won a couple titles recently. I feel like Clemson is the one outlier that anyone is going to say.
Yeah,
that's not an SEC or Big Ten team.
Yeah.
I don't feel like any other name. I mean, Florida State probably would have been mentioned a couple years ago. I don't think anyone's saying them right now.
No one's saying them right now.
But
you might have a player in Miami for a season. Who knows? Like, with the amount of money that they spend in
Miami, very much have to see it. They've been talked about it. They're kind of almost in that Texas stage. Except for maybe they're a little better than Texas was there for a while. Granted, part of that being the conference they're in, but they've been close, but not doing it last year with Cam Ward made me just not believe in them because he was so unbelievable. And they still couldn't do it.
The fact that they missed the playoffs entirely. Speaking of revenue sharing, Jake, I just want to throw this. This is not legit numbers. This is just hypothetically. If Tech allocates $15 million of its $20 million in revenue sharing, and Ojo gets roughly $2.5 million in a season, he could have about 6% of its total football allocation presented to one player.
Yeah, and that's where I'm curious to see how this will all work out.
Again, that's if all of it goes to him. That's not saying like they're going to put a percentage of that 6% and then his NIL earnings, obviously, as well, like outside of it.
I'll be curious to see how his kind of contract. I hope it is weird seeing, by the way, on a commitment post, just those numbers. I think this is probably the biggest one we've seen yet.
3-year contract with millions of dollars in each year. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but I think we're going to see more schools start to do this multi-year type thing, and tiering it, kind of like you said. You've mentioned. I know you've mentioned it in kind of a different format. Where it's regulation, but it is they're kind of taken from that concept and tiering it to where there is a already a built-in incentive for him to stay.
Yep.
And then obviously you can have donors step in on the NIL front and entice even more to retain them, which I'm sure donor like Cody Campbell will. Yeah.
Yeah. And of
it'd
course
be more like Dodge Ram of Lubbock.
Sure. Yeah. What's a sand company? Is there a sand company that's
Arrakis Inc. Sorry.
Arrakis. Yeah. Dune Incorporated.
That just went over a bunch of people.
A lot of people said, not me. I caught it. I'm too fast. Nothing goes over my head. I would catch it. But yeah, no. I just think that it's a fun conversation with the NILs. And again, Jake, we may not have an answer to this for the next 10 years. This might be a continual conversation that I think personally it's going to be kind of a roller coaster ride of NIL is good for college sports. NIL is bad for college sports. NIL is good for programs. NIL is bad for programs. And quite frankly, that probably means it's not that bad, because if it's all kind of leveling out, then we might have a pretty decent system if people can start to understand it and not totally abuse it. The one thing that needs to be done is the transfer portal.
Yeah,
I think that's
what I was about to say is I really don't have that big of an issue with it on the recruiting side of things.
Yeah.
I will say it just doesn't feel, it feels kind of gross whenever you see a last second commitment to a team that wasn't even in the top 8. And I realize Tech fans will think I'm just saying that because he went to Tech. It's not. Texas could do the same. I mean, not quite the same, because they started trending for him in the middle of the season. But, there's no hidden message in it. Texas got in the Justice Terry sweepstakes from NIL. Not quite the same story as how this Felix Ojo recruitment worked, but an example where it worked for Texas, and it was because of NIL, or at least that's what got them into the running. And then they did use relationship building, things like that, to close.
That is what it's going to take in today's recruiting world, though. I mean, it just is. That is what it's going to take to get some of these guys, and so. And it's it's kind of like the college football game, Jake. Some of your recruits care more about their popularity and their money and this, that, and the other. Other recruits are going to care more about your tradition and player development and getting to the NFL and playing time. And it just depends on the player. Some of them are going to want to be in it for the bag. Some of them are going to want to be in it because they love the program. That's the world we live in, unfortunately. But fun episode, Jake. Good conversation. Good way to start the week. This has been your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns. Again, we come out with these episodes Monday through Friday, so please like, share, and subscribe. We drop these episodes daily at 12 noon. And so can't wait to see you for the rest of the week as we approach the regular season of college football. These conversations will continue to happen. Again, probably 10, 15 minutes. We went a little over today, but as we get closer to football season, these conversations are going to get longer and longer. So with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, as always, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.